Well, this is the Big Friendly Swim podcast, and I'm the Big Friendly host. And today's guest is a longtime announcer for USA Swimming and for many World Aquatics meets as well. Michael Poropat, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thanks for being here. So, just to get things kicked off, take me through your history in the swimming world and where did you swim grow up? You swim in college?
Yeah, I grew up swimming. Had a backyard pool and kind of got infant training and don't really remember learning to swim. I could swim before I could walk and just loved being around the water. I was in Pleasanton, California, so I grew up swimming for the Pleasanton Seahawks. Stayed with them pretty much through high school. Went down to Mission San Jose briefly and then came back to the Seahawks. And then from there was able to go swim for Columbia University in New York City. And that's where I got to do my first announcing. But yeah, I had a nice introduction to swimming, an inspirational introduction being in the Bay Area, with some swimming legends there. And yeah, that was it.
I actually was meaning to ask you about this because I thought this was really funny. I used to lifeguard at that pool, the Pleasanton Seahawks pool. I live in Livermore.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Like when I was doing research for the interview and trying to find stuff to ask you about, I noticed one of your Instagram posts talked about Pleasanton Seahawks, and I'm like, no way. That's really funny that you grew up in the area. What if you don't mind me asking, what high school did you go to?
I swam for Foothill High School.
Oh wow, that's crazy. I was over at Granada, in Livermore. That's so funny. It's such a small world.
Yeah. And my very first coaching job was the JV coach and the assistant coach for Livermore High.
Oh no, that's so awesome. That's such a funny connection. I had no idea that you'd grown up in the area and you swam with Seahawks. Was Steve still the head coach at the time?
Yeah, absolutely. And we trained pretty hard. We had a good group. We had a very strong group of swimmers. Got some nationally ranked relays while we were there, and I came out of it thinking I wasn't really that good of a swimmer, being sort of at the bottom end of Pacific swimming, all-star teams and stuff, and going to Western zones and just kind of being there. I thought that's as far as I could get, and my training partners picking up junior national cuts at 15, 16. And so I didn't really think I had a future in swimming, and it was one of Steve's assistant coaches, Tom Wilson, who reached out to me and said, you're quick enough to swim somewhere, if you want to stay in the sport and get involved. And that was a very important phone call that I had from him, and it kept me going.
Now, what got you started in the world of announcing? What was the first announcing gig that you secured, and then what was the progression from there to do a World Championships or an Olympics or an Olympic trials?
Sure. So I had been in and out of school at Columbia. We had a training trip out to Hawaii that I didn't really want to come back from, and ended up staying out there for a little bit longer, and it ended up being kind of inspired by Jack Kerouac and some of the beatniks out of Columbia and stuff, and wanted to see more of the world, and came back and stayed on very good terms with Coach Jim Bolster, who was there still and was my coach at Columbia. And Jim let me get in the water and continue training with the team. And my eligibility had expired, so I said, Jim, let me start announcing the home meets so I can do something, as I feel like I'm part of the team, but I can't score. And so I started doing the Columbia men's and women's home meets. And I believe that was in 2001, in the fall of '01 or spring of '02. And just a couple meets here and there. And when I was doing that, Jim had announcing experience as well. He had done the NCAA championships a couple times, I think, in the late '90s. And he was asked to announce the U.S. Open out in Eisenhower Park in Long Island in the fall of '01. And he just wasn't available. I happened to be in his office when he got the call, and he just passed the phone over to me and said, I got a guy here. Maybe he can do it for you. So that was the U.S. Open out in Eisenhower Park, which followed off of a World Cup stop. I think it was a World Cup stop that USA Swimming had hosted out there, and so there was first major meet for USA Swimming, and it was a significant meet. Got to see a 16-year-old Phelps race Tom Malchow. Both of them were under the U.S. Open record in the 200 fly, and it was kind of a shock to me to all of a sudden, here we go.
Yeah. Well, now you've been doing it for 23 years, coming up on. What's been some of the ways that your announcing has changed in your opinion, or some of the ways that you've grown as an announcer or changed specific things that you do, and then some of your favorite moments that have shaped your career so far?
Sure. Well, I think I started out, being inspired by a Michael Buffer, like a boxing announcer, and thinking that, I could elevate the race or elevate the meet, and, really trying to, I think, put maybe a little too much flavor onto races and race calls and swimmer introductions. And I can remember one of the early meets I did was a Charlotte Ultra Swim meet that they used to host down in Mecklenburg. They might still have some remnant of it, but that at this meet, I started talking about why swimmers were swimming fast, and trying to explain techniques and racing strategies, but a little more in a nuanced way that got parents to start asking questions. Why is he talking about this? And I don't think I've heard my coach talk about this, or this is different from something my coach has said. And I got some feedback from that was like, don't go there. It's not worth it. And you're gonna make the wrong kind of waves with that kind of almost like a speculation type of announcing.
Yeah.
And I didn't get invited back to that meet for a while. But so I think I learned that it's no matter however magnificent a job I could possibly do, it's never about the announcer. It's never about anything besides the athletes in the water, and to really make sure the focus is always highlighting their work and their achievements.
Now this is sort of building off of that, but on a fun level, what have been some of the most memorable races in your opinion that you've had the privilege of announcing for?
Yeah, so there's been quite a few. I've really had a very special career. If I lost my voice forever tomorrow, I'd be really happy with everything I've been able to do, and it's really hard to sort of narrow down. One of the just a sort of an epic race that I got to call that maybe some people remember, I think it's a pretty select group, was I think it was the 2003 Eastern Intercollegiate Swim League, the EISL, which is the league I competed in. It was the Ivy Leagues plus Army and Navy. And they used to have their championships, and I got to announce it when Columbia was hosting. I'm pretty sure it was the spring of '03. And there was this guy who swam for Harvard named John Cole. And he swept the distance events all 4 years that he swam in the Ivies, 500, 1,000, 1650. This guy was a very, very impressive swimmer. And he swam for Harvard, and there was a tight team race. I'm pretty sure it was with Princeton. It's pretty much always those two teams. And going into the final night, there had been some kind of talk on deck that Cole may have hurt his hand, and it was potentially broken, and maybe he's not going to swim the 1650. And sure enough, he shows up, and his hand is taped up, and I'm, I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to speculate. I'm still, a 20-something-year-old, and so at some point, though, during that race, he has a goggle and cap malfunction, and he ends up stopping mid-pool and making an adjustment. and swimming to the wall and then taking his cap off and doing a complete like goggle reset. And this is, I want to say, maybe with 300 to go in the 1650, and he's leading by 15 yards, even with the busted hand. But here comes a guy. I'm pretty sure it's a Yale swimmer. I think it was Greg Palumbo, um, who's I think been the runner-up to Cole on numerous occasions. And he sees this happen. He sees the guy stop, and he just goes full sprint, and manages to really close the gap and pull up on John Cole. And they duke it out over the final 150, and John Cole still manages to get a win. And that was just a a race I don't think I'll ever forget. Even with the spectacle of the Olympic Games and world records, something like that where it was a really hot, intense battle, and nothing replicates. Is like as amazing as Lucas Oil Stadium was. That intimacy of a college conference championship or the NCAA championships, and like how wild everyone is on the pool deck for those meets. So that one will always stick with me. But and I was real lucky that early in my career I got to do that. The first major swim that I called was at the Spring Nationals in 2002. So right after I had gotten in, USA Swimming used to have two national champs, and that Spring Nationals was a long course meet as well. I'm pretty sure it was regularly long course. And Sam Kendricks, who did a ton of announcing with me and was really kind of my mentor, he got ill last second. He had some strep throat and couldn't make it. And luckily, it synced up with my spring break. I was still in school. So I got to call Aaron Pearsall's first 200 backstroke world record at that meet. That one really stands out as well. That was pretty special. And then sort of some of the big meets I've called just sort of fall in together, like the 2019 Guangzhou World Champs. Having Reagan come out of nowhere and set that 200 back world record, and seeing that world record line, be in danger. And it was such a fast record, that Missy had set. And then to see that record line in danger, and then to see that she was really owning it in the last 25, that was something I don't think I'll ever forget. In the same meet, right? You get Dressel's first world record swim in the 100 fly, and
both of Michael Phelps'
relay.
fly world records went down that meet.
Yeah, right. Milok as well, and so yeah, some special dramatic meets like that. And then getting to work the Tokyo Games, and that first day where you have the first two finals, and I worked just the men's events in Tokyo as well. Having that 400 IM, with Kalish and Litherland, and then the 400 free where you had a swimmer win it from lane 8, and the medals all coming from not the middle lanes, and that race was just electric, and that was everything that the Olympics should be about. Here's a kid, a young swimmer, who's unknown from an unknown country, or not unknown to the Western world really, and U.S. fans at least, but to have Ahmed Hafnaoui show up like that and deliver and have that emotional reaction when he finished that race, that's like, what else can you ask for? This is exactly what I'd like to see in the sport, and it was about as exciting as you could get.
It's always a lot of fun too to see like the different levels of swimming and like the different atmospheres and the different positive things that come out of like, because you're exactly right. Like conference swimming championships for like a college team is completely different than like a Worlds or an Olympics or even a U.S. Nationals. Like when I swam in college, I wish somebody had recorded this, or like it wasn't televised, but I was swimming the mile against one of my teammates. We were about a body length ahead of I was about a body length ahead of him for about the whole race, like maybe a body length and a half, and like 200 yards left, and he starts outsplitting me by 0.2 of a second, 0.3 of a second, like every single 50, until we flip with a 75 left. and he's even with me. For the last 3 laps, we're just duking it out. Even like 5 yards from the wall, somebody had a video of that. Last 5 yards, I'm still ahead of him, and then he out touches me by 6/100ths of a second.
Oh, ha.
Like my teammates told me, like the crowd at the meet was going crazy when they
I
realized
bet.
that he was slowly catching me. I mean,
I
like
bet it was the best
nobody
time
had.
though.
Oh yeah, we both dropped like a minute. Like nobody I'd be more happy to lose to like that. But God, I wish somebody had recorded like the announcing from that. So at trials, this was something interesting I wanted to ask you about. Kevin Cargill, your co-announcer, who's doing the women's events. He had to navigate through a timing system mishap where I don't really know what happened, but in the women's two fly, the touchpads weren't registering anybody's splits. So for you, have you ever experienced something similar to that? And then how did you adapt in the moment if you have experienced something like that?
Yeah, there's it's I think it's rare that we get sort of everything synced up and working exactly as it should. Unfortunately, we're not the NFL, and we don't have 15 different layers of cameras and evaluation and instant loops going on. Um, so it's I think the norm is sort of for me at least has always been just be prepared to just hopefully be able to see the pool and go from there
Yeah.
and work with what you got. Because yeah, I mean, timing systems have gone down, or the split board that we have. Um, I've worked meets in that Pro Swim series out in Mesa. Having the in Arizona that weather come through and having dust and wind and the angle of the sun and um, there's a lot of elements. We had power go out in San Antonio recently at the Pro Swim series. Um, so yeah, and I've worked meets as well, like the Junior Pan Pacs in out in Hawaii. I couldn't really see the pool. I was kind of offset, and I didn't have a board. I didn't have a monitor. I could barely see the scoreboard. And that's another meet with great energy on deck. And all the junior national teamers that get to represent their countries there, they're fired up. That's an exciting meet. So I just try to maybe convey that and maybe be able to share anything that I can and let them know that this there's a reason that this excitement is here. I can barely see lane 4, but this is what they're doing. Uh, so that's sort of my trajectory. I've likened swim announcing before to like skiing, and I'm not a skier. I've done it before, but you drop in on a slope and you're going downhill. In the next couple minutes, you're going to end up downhill at the bottom. Whether it's pretty or not. This race is going to happen. You're going to get to the bottom of the hill. You're going to get to the end of the meet, and just make sure that everything keeps moving in place and that you're still standing at the bottom.
That's really interesting because, like, from an exterior perspective, like, as somebody who's watched these meets for like most of my life, it is exceptionally hard to tell when something goes wrong or when something like that where you're not able to see the pool very well, or where like at like Mesa where the sun's reflecting off the water probably. It's exceptionally hard to tell from like an audience perspective that something has gone wrong or that there's something that's making it more difficult to be able to like announce the meet. So I think it speaks to the quality of like not only yourself but the people who do this with you, that like you guys are able to adapt to that and to keep things going and match the energy with the audience to get everybody excited.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thanks for then that's an indication of kind of getting it right. If nobody knows, right, that it
Yeah.
happened.
I mean, like at trials, like when that happened in the two fly, Kevin Cardwell, he adapted right away. I was amazed by like there was a brief like pause of confusion, but it was like maybe a second before he just went right back into calling like, oh, Reagan Smith is leading, and like knew exactly who was in each lane. Like it was really impressive because I'm like, I've announced a few meets myself, like for my college team, and something would go wrong, and I'd immediately like fumble over my words for a good 10, 15 seconds before I'd adapt back into it. So it was amazing to me see like that level of adaptation of being able to just roll with the punches.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, and I think that's led to, me being able to continue in that role is, don't get bent out of shape when things don't
Yeah,
go exactly how you want it to, and be ready to pivot.
yeah. So now that you've done multiple Olympic trials meets and multiple big international meets and college meets and been all around the world announcing for the sport, what was the most exciting thing for you? Because there was a lot of talk and a lot of build-up about Lucas Oil Stadium, which it was pretty awesome. Like, as there should be, it was a phenomenal like venue for the meet. But what was the most exciting thing for you about trials this year, and some of your favorite moments, like throughout?
Yeah, so the meet itself, and I don't think I think I've still kind of got the blinders on from working the competition. I haven't really watched any of the NBC coverage yet. Hopefully, I'll get to. Um, but sitting down and getting your voice amplified to that level, which it's never really happened before. The Doha Stadium was pretty amazing, but it was as high quality as it was much more contained and compacted. Um, so. Uh, it took a little while of just sort of just making sure I'm going to get this right, and just kind of keep the blinders on and don't acknowledge that there's or acknowledge on sort of a subconscious level that there's tens of thousands of people listening right now. Um, so I think that'll still settle in. Just that's just kind of on hold with that sort of the mind blowingness of the proportion of everything. But as far as from a more like personal level, this was the first major meet that I brought my son to, who's 11 now, and um, for him to be able to sit next to me at that meet, I had asked USA Swimming on the first couple days when I was just there for rehearsal if I could get him on deck for rehearsals, and they were kind enough to give me a credential for that, and it ended up being just a regular meet credential. So I'm like, Lincoln, let's take advantage of this, and if you can be cool, and you can maybe hang out for a little bit. So he got to do a couple sessions sitting right beside me, morning and night, and that was really special to me to be able to share that with him at that level. And I think he also was able to walk away being like, wow, that was a special thing for me as well, and a neat privilege. And I've been working at the University of Texas calling their home meets since I think 2016 or 2017. I started for the swim team, and so there was a special connection to seeing Carson and Shane make the team. Especially Carson on day one in that 400 IM, just putting everything together, and then that's sort of that build up for Shane, over the last year, and then even through the week, and having the 200 IM be so late in the week, and just sort of being like, what's going to happen here, and then just to see that all come together, and also to have him just be so fast, on the front half of that race.
He took it out
Really,
hard.
it really gave some excitement to start thinking about, the 200 IM in Paris and what's possible.
Yeah.
So, and that was just on a sort of a personal level, and seeing those guys, because being an age group coach on deck at UT, and seeing some of those swimmers and how they carry themselves, and including David Johnston and Luke Hobson, Drew Kibler, all those guys have been all that you would want them to be as sort of leaders of the sport.
When Shane came into the press conference about halfway through, he like said something that got a laugh out of everybody. He was like, "Guys, just so we're clear, I am fully out of it right now." Like his mind was fully not in the room. Understandably, like having just made your first Olympic team, you're not going to be wanting to sit there and like focus on a bunch of random faces that you've never seen before. But it got a laugh out of everybody when he said, "I'm like, I'm fully out of it right now. I'm gonna answer things to the best of my ability."
Yeah, well, good for him. He did it.
But it must have been exciting to be able to have your son there too, and be able to share that moment of like, was that the first time you've been able to have him at a meet at this level?
Yeah, he'd been to the Tier Pro Swim Series before, and he's been to a couple meets at UT on deck. Um, so I don't know, he comes off as kind of jaded already. When we were doing one of the invites at UT just this past season, I think in November or something, and Wisconsin was there, and Phoebe Bacon comes by and she sees this young kid on deck, and she stops and talks to him and spends 5 minutes, just saying what's up and how are you enjoying whatever, and moves on. And I'm like, Lincoln, that's Phoebe Bacon, that's an Olympian, and he goes, oh yeah, I remember her. We talked in San Antonio at the Pro Swim. Like,
They all know
seriously?
him already. He's a part of the club.
Yeah.
That's really funny. So shifting things over to more of the, not the personal side, but to the non-announcing side of what you do. I believe it's is it Pflugerville?
Yeah, that's right. Pflugerville.
Okay, I had a feeling the P was silent. What's been the most exciting thing for you about running the Pflugerville Flamingos, and how has the team grown since? If I'm right, it started about 3 years ago.
Yeah, about 3 years ago, my wife got it off the ground. I had originally come to Pflugerville to run a satellite for Longhorn Aquatics, and through the pandemic, things just kind of shifted up here, and the satellite operation ended up going away. And I spent the last few years coaching on deck at UT. So in the meantime, announcing it puts a strain on whatever job you have. It's 5 or 6 weeks away that you want to prioritize, and you don't want to turn down an invitation, to go to something that World Aquatics is hosting, or if USA Swimming invites you to a meet, you want to be able to take it. And I was thankful enough that over these last 20 plus years, I've had employers that have been, at least flexible enough to let this continue, and let this happen. And, eventually it puts a strain on things. Eventually, I think it's gotten to a point. Obviously, I've jumped companies several times, but it gets to a point where it's like, okay, what are you going to do? Are you going to announce, or are you going to do this job? So, when that point kind of came with Longhorn Aquatics, and my wife said, this pool here is empty. No one's using it except the high school program. Why don't we get something going here in Pflugerville, and then you can do what you want? So she ran sort of the pilot program our first year. It's just a seasonal team, just trying to get kids out of the summer league, and get them introduced to USA Swimming, and get them to keep swimming. And so when in 2023 is when I came over, in the fall of 23. So I've only spent 1 year with Flamingos, and it's really been all that I could have asked for. Um, having sort of left a little bit of a mark in the couple years that I was here already coaching, it's not like I was a complete stranger. I had some swimmers who came up, through the satellite, and then either went on to train downtown with the head coach and Mike Lydola, and his national development groups. Um, so, there was still some residue of what I had done here, and we were able to just pick up on that. And we were just allotted 4 lanes, and we're sharing with a high school program, and we hit capacity in our first month, just this last season, just on a word of mouth, and we've got a pretty huge list of people that want to try out to join this fall now, and so hopefully we can get another lane or two, or and keep expanding the program. But it's just really a nice fit because it's it's our program, right? And it's so far it's just what we've sculpted and offered, and um, just it's a level of swimming too that I enjoy seeing as well. Here's you think you like swimming, you're into the sport, you've had some fun with summer league. Let me show you where it can go from here. What's possible, and that's I think really exciting to me. And it's it's 12 and unders, right? So it's younger kids that are more open to, oh wow, this is a whole new world.
I like literally before this interview, I was coaching for my summer league team that I run, and you're exactly right. Like younger kids are typically more, I guess, pliable is the right word, in that they are more receptive to things and more receptive to like try this or try like to changing things about how they're swimming or trying new things in their swimming. Whereas like with the older kids, it's a lot more of, at least for me, it's a lot more bargaining of like, okay, if you don't want to do the 50 butterfly, let's do the 50 breaststroke.
Sure. They got preferences, and
Yeah.
opinions.
Well, a lot of them too, they know what they're good at and they know what they want to swim, but it's like trying to get them to try new things that they haven't done before can be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, so I'm really excited, and when I took that role and then eventually got settled here in the Austin area, we bought a house right next to the pool in Pflugerville. So that now that we're back there, and I'm not commuting as much, or really at all, it's a pretty special setup. So I really can't complain.
It must be exciting too, and like pretty fun to be able to run it as like a family affair, like to have like your wife involved in it with you, and to have that like level of comfort of knowing that the person that you're working with is like somebody that you trust and that you've known for so long.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point, and it is. I mean, we've been together, since like I think about 20 years now.
Ooh.
Married for just over about 12, and so obviously we have a lot of common ground, and
Yeah.
not there's not a lot that we have to sort of iron out when it comes to making decisions.
Yeah. Well, Michael, thank you so much for sitting down with me. This was so much fun. I'm really glad we were able to set this up, both because I think it's really interesting to hear from like people obviously have heard your voice. Like they know your voice, and like in my opinion at least you have like one of the most iconic announcing voices that I've ever heard. Like
Thank you.
I mean that like genuinely, like one of the greatest announcing voices, and we're so lucky to have somebody like you be that voice for the sport alongside Kevin Cargill and Ratty Gaines and all the people who are involved. But I just thought it would be so interesting to get you on here and hear your story and have you tell people about what you do.
Yeah, yeah, you're very welcome. It's a pleasure. Hopefully the story keeps going, and I got more to share.